Today we're going to tackle a pretty wild idea. What if you could explain the absolute chaos of our modern culture wars with something as simple as a coin flip? Yeah, I know, it sounds like a major stretch, but stick with me because there's a surprisingly direct line that connects them.
And that right there, that's the big question we're diving into. We're basically going on a journey that starts with the tiniest possible piece of information imaginable and ends with these massive, crashing waves of online conflict we all see every single day. Let's see how it all hooks together.
All right, so first up, we're going to build the bridge between these two kinda out there worlds. We're just going to follow the path step by step, starting with the absolute basics.
You know, whenever you want to understand some huge, complicated system, you've got to start small. You have to find its smallest, most fundamental part. So for a minute, just forget the culture wars and think smaller. I mean, way, way smaller.
And that brings us right to the bedrock of this whole idea, the bit. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. Computers, right? Zeros and ones. But what we're talking about here is something much more fundamental, much more universal than that.
So a bit is really just a measure of uncertainty. Think about it. Heads or tails. That's one bit of information. Yes or no. One bit. It's the moment you go from not knowing to knowing. It's really like the atom of information theory.
And here's the really cool part. A bit is so much more than a simple on or off switch. It's this incredibly powerful little tool for measuring some really basic forces in our world. Everything from financial risk to just how surprising an unexpected event is. This tiny little unit is the foundation for all the complexity that's about to follow.
Okay, but let's be real. The world is obviously way more complicated than a single coin flip. So how in the world do we get from one simple bit to the overwhelming complexity of, well, everything?
This is where it really starts to get interesting. In this next section, we're going to see how these tiny little bits start organizing themselves, building up into these incredible, complex layers.
So, the source material explains that the key mechanism here is something called broken symmetries. It sounds complicated, but the basic idea is that simple, predictable patterns sometimes break, and when they do, boom, new, more complex structures have a chance to form. It's the same process that takes us from atoms to molecules, or from single cells to you and me.
This slide lays it out perfectly. It's like a ladder of complexity. You start with individual organisms, right, like us. Then you've got the geneplex. That's the entire gene pool of a species. But then there's a third layer on top of all that, the memeplex, which, of course, begs the question, what on earth is a memeplex?
A memeplex is just a fancy term for a system of ideas, or memes. It's the collective soup we're all swimming in. Our culture, our shared beliefs, our political ideologies, all the stories we tell ourselves. And just like genes, these ideas compete with each other, they evolve, and they try to spread.
Now, for most of human history, these idea pools, these memeplexes, they evolved pretty slowly. But what happens when you pour rocket fuel on that fire? What happens when a brand new technology comes along and just completely rewrites all the rules? And that, right there, brings us to the traumatic heart of this whole story. The rise of what the source calls rogue memes. This is where it all clicks back to the culture wars we see today.
The catalyst, the game changer, was the arrival of mass media. All of a sudden, the speed and the sheer scale at which ideas could spread was just fundamentally different. It created a totally new environment.
Just look at this chart. The printing press was a total revolution, right? But then radio comes along and just amplifies ideas to a level no one had ever seen. And then came the internet, which created an amplification power that is so massive it's hard to even wrap your head around. It became the perfect breeding ground for a new kind of idea.
And this gets us to the central conflict. See, historically, for an idea system to be successful, it had to be cooperative. It had to more or less align with the long-term interests of us, its human hosts, just to survive. But the internet spawned a totally new species, rogue memeplexes. And their only goal is their own survival. They do it by grabbing our attention, no matter the cost to us.
So, how do they do it? Simple. They use us as hosts. They hijack our natural desire for community and connection. Their success isn't measured by truth or by how helpful they are or our well-being. Nope. It's measured by one thing and one thing only: engagement. Clicks, shares, outrage, that's their currency. This is the engine of the culture wars. Ideas that are optimized not for truth, but for pure attention-grabbing conflict.
Wow. Okay. So, after all of that, from a simple coin flip, all the way to these rogue waves of ideas, where does that leave us in all this?
Let's bring it all home.
And here's the really tough pill to swallow. This isn't some abstract problem that's happening out there. The source makes it painfully clear that we are the hosts. We're the ones clicking and sharing and feeding these rogue ideas every single day. And a lot of the time, we don't even realize we're doing it.
So there you have it. We've traced the line from a single bit of information, a coin flip, all the way to the rogue waves of ideas that are churning up our online world. We're all participating in this system. And that leaves us with the final and most critical question of all. Now that we understand how the machine works, what are we going to do about it?